Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite people returning to the show to talk about his Kickstarter that's going on right now. It's a really unique thing that he's crowdfunding. I can't wait for you all to check it out. And we'll talk about some of his comic work, too. Don't worry, everybody. But it's my pleasure to welcome Charles Soule back to the show. Charles, thanks for taking the time.
Of course. It's been far too long since the last time we chatted, and I'm glad we have a good excuse to talk today.
Yeah, you're right. It's been quite a while. A lot of things you've done a lot since the last time you've been on the show. I was thinking about it earlier this morning. I was like, man, the first time I had you on with Letter 44, and I think you had just gotten Swamp Thing, but I don't think any of your issues had come out. So, can you cast your mind back that far, even?
Yeah, it's funny because I had a lot of in the last couple of years, I had a lot of 10-year anniversaries of things. So the 10-year anniversary of starting work at Marvel, which was with my Thunderbolts run back in 2013. The 10-year anniversary of starting Swamp Thing, which was back in 2013, so 2023. Yeah. And then Letter 44, obviously, was a series that was around then, too. This year has things like Death of Wolverine is the 10-year anniversary and all kinds of stuff. But, yeah, I'm a real veteran at this point, which is kind of both sobering and cool to think about because it's hard to stay in this business for a long time, and having been in it at a high level for like 12 years now is really something.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the other thing that we're here to talk about today, which we'll feature first, is your current Kickstarter that I mentioned, which goes back also to your roots of music, something that you've have a passion for. And when you're younger, were really immersed in. And I saw in your newsletter, you said you'd kind of gotten away from it a little bit and you wanted to sort of re-engage. So what's going on, everybody, is Charles has a concept album. I've listened to it. It's amazing. And it's all about curse words, the amazingly well-received Image series he did with Ryan Brown. If you haven't read it, it's awesome. You can get the collected volume in this Kickstarter as well. So what can you tell us about the project? Give us your thoughts about deciding to do this and the reception so far. I mean, it's the second day as we're recording this, and you've already more than doubled the goal. So on to greater heights, hopefully.
So curse words. I mean, you need to start with curse words, I think, which is the comic that I did with Ryan Brown, who I've done a lot of work with over the years. We did another book called Billions Genies that people might have heard of that did very well. He and I are a real comics creating duo, I guess, and we love working together, and it's been great. But it all started, the first big thing we did was this book, Curse Words, which ran from Image from 2016 to 2019. And it's sort of a dark urban fantasy book, but it's very funny and surreal, which characterizes everything we do. It's about an evil wizard named Wizard, which right there kind of tells you the kind of book you're getting. But it's an evil wizard named Wizard who lives in this horrible hell dimension called the Whole World, H-O-L-E, and he comes to Earth, tells everybody that he's a good wizard, he's not a bad wizard, because he wants to kind of dig in here because it's a lot better here than it is where he comes from. And so he figures if he tells everybody he's a good wizard, people will like him and he can kind of be loved instead of feared, which doesn't really work out for him that well, but it makes for a great story. And so that's the comic. It's sort of like I guess like Rick and Morty or Archer or something like that, but with evil wizards in New York City. And it ran for 28 issues from Image, which is a really long run for an indie comic then or now, from 2016 to 2019. And it's great. And so in 2020, Ryan and I found ourselves with some time on our hands and the summer. I don't know if you remember what was going on in the summer of 2020, but yeah. we weren't as busy as we used to be. So we decided that we would do a Kickstarter back then to fund a big omnibus hardcover collection of curse words, because up to that point, it was only available in trade collections, like 5 trades. So we kickstarted it. It did really, really well to the point where we needed to start putting in stretch goals to incentivize people to keep, pledging and increasing their pledges. So that went really well. It went so well that we started having to make up for kind of weird stretch goals because we're running out of ideas. And at one point I thought, well, I will agree to write and compose and record and perform a full-length concept album based on the comic if we hit a certain level of funding. I wasn't sure that we would hit that level. We did hit that level. But then I was like, okay, I'll just do this kind of, not in a half-ass way. It would have been good, but my assumption was that I would have just done like acoustic and vocals or something, like just kind of whipped up some songs really quickly and just kind of went for it. And obviously it's 4 years later now, so I didn't do it quickly at all. When I started writing the songs, I realized that I was having kind of the time of my life, and getting back to music for me, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, like my musical roots, was incredibly fulfilling in a way that made me realize how much I missed it, how much I just really loved having music as part of my creative output, as part of the the deck of creative things that I did. So I started getting really into the idea of making this record something special, like a full-on musical, like fully composed and produced and done thing, not just like a bunch of MP3s I'd email out to people. So I started working on it very much in earnest, but to do that takes a really long time, especially with everything else I'm doing. So cut to 4 years later, and the record is done. I have went into a really good studio in Brooklyn, New York, where I recorded everything. It's been mixed, mastered. It sounds fantastic. I'm super proud of it, and I've brought it to Kickstarter because that's a way that fans of mine could find my work, even if it's something that might be a little out of left field for what I normally do. And so far, the response has been incredible. As you said, it funded in like 76 minutes or 79 minutes or something like that, and it's already now at like 250% over the goal, and we're only on day 2. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. But I'm mostly like really excited for people just to hear it, because nobody knows I can do this. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what people think.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it to be out in the world as well, because here's the thing, like, you guys, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Charles' newsletter. His most recent installment, you can hear the first track. Go and listen to it. That will give you an idea of kind of just the quality, and it's just so amazing. And here's what's going to happen, right? If you don't pledge, which, not everybody has the means right now. We understand that. But if you miss out on this, you're going to be sad. Because here's the thing. People that do get it, they're going to play it for their friends, and they go, oh, I want it. So hopefully there'll be a way to, for those that don't have a chance to hear about it or what have you, to get it later on. But you mentioned your musical roots, and I no kidding that the 4 years were worth it in my mind, because it is amazing. And just to let everybody know, I mean, you did, it wasn't that you just sang or played the acoustic guitar. You did everything but the drums, right. Which is a lot of work, on top of, producing it, musical arrangement, the vocals. I mean, it's a lot of work. But you mentioned having missed that and kind of your musical roots and what have you. So give people an idea of kind of your evolution, the instruments you can play, how you kind of got your feet under you, when you were a younger man, and kind of learning this music as a creative outlet.
Sure. I mean, music is a language, right? It's a language just like learning French or Chinese or any language. And I am fortunate that my mother, I don't know, I think she was just trying to get me like out from under her feet at the time, but she started me playing violin when I was 3 years old. And so I started being immersed in music ideas. I wasn't, no 3-year-old is a brilliant, maybe Mozart, but I was not Mozart when I was 3 on the violin. So, but I studied the violin all through high school, and into college. So I took lessons. I studied a lot of classical pieces. I was in the orchestra. I did that. And so that was really where I started, which was with formal classical performance training on the violin. But then in high school, I realized, there's this whole other type of music that I hadn't been playing that seemed to be an easier way to get people's attention and be cool and all that. So I went away to summer camp one summer, and one of the counselors had an acoustic guitar, and he would play, and like everybody would kind of like circle around and listen. And it was that whole cliched thing, because he was playing like, pop songs of the day, like songs that like, I'm just going to say the girls were like into it. Right. And so I went home and I was like, I would love an acoustic guitar. And so my parents were like, all right. And they got me one for Christmas that year. And then I just hammered at it. Like I studied it like I've studied anything I've ever studied in my life. And the guitar they bought me, because they didn't know if I was going to really stick with this, was a shitty guitar, frankly. It was not very good. And so it was difficult to play and it was difficult to learn on. And so what that meant was that by forcing myself to play that guitar and get good on that guitar, when I shifted to my next guitar, which was a Fender Stratocaster, which is like a beautiful instrument, I was suddenly really, like, again, I wasn't Eddie Van Halen, but compared to how long I'd been working, I was suddenly very fluent with guitar. And I think some of that comes from being able to play the violin. Like, they're different instruments, of course, but like I had a sense of what a fifth was or a fourth was, or like the musical language of what I was doing. So at that point, then I had an acoustic guitar and had an electric guitar, and I couldn't sing at that point, but I could play. And so I started getting into bands. Like, if you're in high school and you can play electric guitar, you can get into bands. You just have to kind of want it and decide. So I started playing the stuff I liked at the time, which would have been like, Hendrix covers and just stuff like that. The stuff I thought was cool, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, whatever, classic rock stuff. And I still wasn't singing at this point. I didn't start singing for a little while. But when I got into, my family moved overseas, and then I met a new group of musicians there who were jazz players. And I got very inspired by jazz because it was kind of the next level of playing, the next place for me to become obsessed about and try to increase my skills there. So I got really, really, really into that. And right around then, so we're looking at, like, I don't know, senior year of high school, freshman year of college is when I started singing too. And singing is also a completely different musical language, different than any instrument, but it's an instrument too. And so I think if you look at my creative output just in general, I'm the kind of guy who gets very obsessed with things and goes really hard in them and focuses really hard and can bring a lot of energy and intensity to whatever I'm doing creatively. And music has always been like that. So cut to around the third year of college, and I was like, all of my like living income was from music. So I was in like 4 or 5 different bands. I was playing like 3 or 4 nights a week and all these different gigs. So I would everything from like a cover band at a bar to coffee shop thing to like original music at like frat parties, and just everywhere I could play, I was playing. So I started to get pretty good. I minored in music theory at college, and I sort of thought that's what I was going to do for my living. I wanted to do that for my living. And then I graduated from college, and I had applied to law school as part of my kind of senior year, what are you going to do with your life, questions from my parents, which were valid. I'm not like faulting them for it, but I ended up getting into an extraordinary law school. I got into Columbia, and the idea of turning away from that when I like didn't really have anything. Like, I had music. I loved being a musician, and I loved being creative, but it wasn't an income really. I mean, I could play in cover bands for the rest of my life, but I would be, I'd be kind of broke. I like what works in college doesn't work in life, So I went to law school, and then I got out of law school, and it became immediately apparent. I played all through law school, still had lots of bands in law school, but the minute I got out, it was obvious that there was going to be no more like, oh, I've got a gig tonight, I got to go, or whatever. Like, it just was over, because you just can't do it. You cannot have those. You can't be a first-year associate at a law firm or a second or a third year and have a working band. Not at the level that I wanted to do it. Not at the level of like focus and rehearsal and specificity that I do all of my creative stuff. So I sort of reluctantly let it go. And that is part of the reason that I focus so hard on writing, because writing is something you can do while you're an attorney, because it's very solitary and you can just sort of hone your craft around the edges of your life. So I got very into writing. I mean, we've talked about that story before. I just decided I wanted it. I wanted to write my way out of law, basically. And so I started doing that for a long time, which kind of takes us all the way through to that 2020 summer Kickstarter, when I just was like, wow, this is a chance to bring music back into my life. And I had a lot of time to like sit with the guitars and remember how to do it and get my fluency back, and then move back into keyboards and bass and all the instruments that I can play, and just like bring it all back. And it felt so good. So that's kind of the story of how I learned to play everything, and how I became the musician that I am, and how it went away for a while, but then I was inspired to just bring it all back, which has been great.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit of get into the nuts and bolts of diving back into it. Was there rust, what have you? But first, I have to ask, Charles Soule, Renaissance man, had your own law firm, fantastic writer. From everything I've heard on this album, just a fantastic musician. Is there anything you're bad at? Is there anything you can't do? Are you bad at sports, or you can't cook?
I was never really a sports person. I will say that. I love running. I run all the time. But I don't know if, I would not consider running being an athlete. I'm sure that there are people who would disagree. But the way I do it, I just kind of run it for mental health mostly. Run for mental health and all that. I don't know. That's a silly question that I refuse to answer. How about that?
I'm 100% putting you on the spot. But I'm just curious. After listening to the album all the way through for the second time yesterday, I'm listening to it while I'm running. And I got home, and I'm thinking, man, Charles is such a fantastic writer, such a great guy, successful. Is there anything he's not good at? I was like, you know what? I'm going to put him on the spot and ask him. But
yeah.
Thanks for indulging me. But yeah, to get back to diving into this and deciding, hey, it's not just going to be some acoustic MP3s with me singing or whatever. I'm really going to go kind of whole hog. When you started doing it, was there rust? Was there anything you're like, man, I got to sort of readjust my thinking or remind myself how to do this?
Yeah, I think, part of it was that I decided, the project is called the Curse Words Concept Album. And a concept album is a very specific thing that has its roots in, as far as I'm concerned, in prog rock influences of the 70s. Those are what I consider concept albums, the records that tell a story. And it goes further back than that. Broadway, there's lots of composed ideas where music tells a story. An opera, further back than that. And there's all kinds of things. But a concept album, in my mind, needs to be kind of rock and roll. It needs to have guitar solos. It needs to have big, powerful vocals and big crescendos, and it needs to have characters and through lines and motifs that repeat from song to song. That's what I think of when I think of a concept album. Now, I'm sure music historians or scholars on here would be like, that's not, what is he talking about? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. To me, that's what it meant. And so I knew that I had to build it in that way, so that there would be songs sung by characters. There would be, it almost would feel like a stage musical without a stage, which is very difficult to even begin to conceptualize. And so I really just took it from who should be singing a song? Who are the characters of Curse Words who deserve a song? What are the concepts that deserve a song? And how do I then find the voice of that person musically? Beyond that, it was what were the genres I hadn't really worked in terms of recording, things that I would be interested in trying to do. There's a metal song on here. There's a song where I basically rap in a French accent the whole time. Yeah. And then there are beautiful layered Broadway style harmonies in a bunch of these songs where you have these choruses that are very emotional and move through them harmonically in really interesting ways. That was just a way for me to challenge myself, because that shit's hard. To do it right and to make it land and to make it be emotional, and it's a whole level of fluency. And so what I found when I was doing it is much the same thing that I find when I go to France or China, which are the vocal languages that I speak, is that if you do it, your brain remembers how to do it. And so I just kind of started. I started with songs I thought would be relatively straightforward. Mr. Magic Man was the first song I did. I think Jacques Rock, the French accent rapping song, was actually the second song I did. And there's a spot in Jacques Rock where he references that he's in Interpol, and then there's this moment where the song kind of stops, and you have this chorus of singers behind him kind of oohing and eyeing, singing International Police. It's very silly and weird, but I was there was no question to me that was the right choice for that moment. And that moment is what unlocked what the whole tone of the album was going to be. Because what it was going to be was it wasn't going to be afraid to be silly. It wasn't going to be so hyper-focused on being extra cool all the time. If I were in my early 20s and trying to make a career out of being a rock star, I would never do something weird like that, because it might be off-putting in some way. But because I'm where I am in my life and I have a successful creative career anyway, this album's not going to make or break me one way or the other. I could do it exactly the way I want it. And realizing that that was the opportunity I had, that it didn't matter if anyone liked it. All that mattered was that it made me happy and it was good. That opened the whole thing like top to bottom. From then on, it was really, I'm not going to say it was easy because it was a huge amount of work, but it wasn't, I never really felt like blocked on it. It was really more like, okay, how do I execute this awesome idea that I have? How do I pull it off? And then the skills were there. I just had to, find the time, which was really the hardest thing.
Yeah, at that point, you're kind of like, okay, I know what this is going to be. I just have to put in the work, basically.
Yeah, but it was one of those great situations where it didn't feel like work. It just felt like joy. The whole time was just joyous, and I think you could hear it on the album. Like this is the record of somebody who is having a lot of fun doing it. I hope anyway.
Yeah, so. And it's funny you mentioned the Jock Zock. So that's probably my second favorite song on the album. It's been stuck in my head all day. But you talk about it being silly, and this being a concept album that really kind of could introduce people to world of curse words if you haven't read it. Which again, I recommend everybody to do so. But also for us fans that are familiar with it, that's sort of a silly, fun book. So you sort of want the tone of the album to reflect that.
I think that's exactly right. Like the record feels like you are listening to the book, and not only because it tells the story, but the style of humor, the type of like gags, the places it goes. You hear something like Team Margaret, and that song sounds like this kind of song the character of Margaret would sing. There's a reason the first song, which is sung from Wizard's perspective, sounds like kind of a 1980s, like, I don't know, like glam rock kind of tune, right? Like that's how he sees himself, as this badass dude with a kick-ass beard, and like, it sounds the way he is. Same with the Scissors You song and so on and so forth. They all sound like the person singing them. So I think people who love curse words are going to really, really connect with this album and have just a blast with it. And that, for me, I'm very like grateful that my career is in a place where I can expend a lot of time and resources on something like this, and it doesn't really. The people who find it, I think, will love it, and that's enough for me. It doesn't have to, hit the top of the Spotify charts or whatever. It's just I'm really happy with how it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, even if you have no idea and never have any plans to read curse words, I think you'll just enjoy it because it's just good music. Other favorites for me, A Whole New World, because it gives little hints into what the world is like after the series ends, dragons on the BQE and what have you. But my favorite is Revelations.
That one is actually kind of like, it's a personal song in a way. And that was, I think, the last one I wrote. And I left it for last knowing that it was going to be a real challenge to get right, to make it feel the way I wanted it to feel. And it was influenced by things like, honestly, like, Taylor Swift and big like pop singers who really put their heart on their sleeve in their songs. And there's plenty of them. Like you could name a lot of she's the one that came to mind. And I think I had just been like listening to some of her stuff when I started working on that song. But there's a long tradition. I mean, Madonna did it, right? There's lots of singers who are unafraid of unabashed emotion in their music. And don't have to hide it behind guitar solos, and don't have to hide it behind anything. It's just them singing about something they're passionate about, which is true of folk singers, which is true of like Bon Iver's like that. There's lots of musicians who do that. But I was going for that vibe, and it was great. I worked some stuff out in that song. I think it was, I really am proud of it, and I'm glad that you connected with it so strongly. I think that's probably, the two you named, Revelations and Whole New World, are probably my favorite two on the record, but, there's a lot to love there, really. Yeah,
and this other part of it, right, like I think a lot of your fans know that you have a background in music, but, again, it's so good, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, but you can tell when you listen to it that you put a lot of yourself in this. You're being kind of vulnerable in a way that you haven't before. Was there any reservations when you started putting this together about that, or?
Some. I mean, look, I'm singing on the record, right? It's not like words. There's no reserve. this is me. I have said very specifically, I have played everything on this album except drums. And so if you're like, God, that guy can't fucking play guitar, that's me. That means I can't do it. If you're like, wow, you really couldn't hit that note, that's me that couldn't hit that note. It's exposed in a way that is a little intimidating. But at the same time, I knowing that, I worked very hard to make sure that I don't think anyone's going to say Charles Soule doesn't know how to play guitar in this. I don't think anyone's going to say Charles Soule can't sing. I think those would be things that I would, if they say that, they're definitely, but singing is.
They're going to be in the minority because, again, when I first, I put the album on, again, you were nice enough to share it with me. I put it on to go on my run, and you started singing, and I was like, holy shit, this guy can sing. Like, I mean, I knew you could, but until you actually hear somebody do it and the quality, I was just blown away, man. Blown away.
Well, I'm really glad, and because if you're going to do this, you either have to do it like when you're at my position, right? When you're putting out a creative thing that's not in your in what you're known for. Mm-hmm. I feel like you either have to do it in kind of a crappy, extremely amateurish way, so people will be like, "Oh, that's cute that he's doing that too. That's fun," but it doesn't really reflect on what he does, the thing that he's really good at. Or you have to do it so well that it's like, hopefully, like you said at the beginning of it, wow, he's really good at more than one thing. And I chose the second route, and I did my best to try to get there, but that's what I was shooting for, to just, I don't like to put anything into the world if it's not to the standard of everything else, if I can. Yeah. So I'm glad that I'm really glad that it connected with you that way. And now I'm even more excited when people hear it. This is great.
Yeah, I'm curious about those close to, like, obviously when you decided to do this, your family probably, they're aware and what have you. They know your background. They probably heard you sing a ton of times. What was their feedback like? Because I know sometimes it's like, are they just telling me what I want to hear? Are they being objective? Should I even, ask their opinion? Just as you were getting this off the ground, was there any?
That's a great question. Because it's technically it's executed. I think it's executed very well, but it is weird. It's like a strange thing. It's not a standard. You know where my influences are in these songs, but some of them are just bizarre. Like as I said, there's a song where I rap the whole song in a French accent. Like it's sort of a bunch of choices that are. They're not the normal decision making for trying to make a record. People don't usually, like, there are exceptions. Frank Zappa did whatever the hell he wanted. Captain Beefheart did whatever the hell he wanted. Like, there are musicians who are known for taking the path, like following their muse to whatever weird place it led. And this has a lot of that spirit in it. But in terms of what my family thought about this, I mean, they all know how much I've missed music and how much it has been a part of my life forever. And so I think that there was, just like in any family, they're happy if I'm happy. Everybody's happy if everybody's happy. So the idea that I was doing this was great. I think it took a little, convincing is the wrong word, but like they were as surprised as I think anybody's going to be when they hear what this record is, like what the choices I decided to make. I mean, there are lengthy spoken word sections in it where I speak in the voices of the characters. Like there are, there's a lot of strange things here that are awesome in the context of a concept album based on Cursewords the comic. But if you're just coming to it kind of raw, it's like, wow, this takes me a second. But I think maybe it took them a second too, but now they're on board. They've heard it in the form that I've been reaching for it to be. Like it's in its final form, and they're like, oh, okay, this all makes sense. Because you can cherry pick singles off this. Like if you just listen to Revelation, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool too. And Whole New World is like a single. Team Margaret is a single. But where this album really shines is if you sit down and listen to it all the way through, I think, because you get the references, you understand the story that you're hearing, which is a big ask of people these days. I don't think tons of people listen to records that way, but again, I don't care. I don't have to be on the top of the, I'm not going to like go on a world tour with this record probably. So, I mean, the secret goal, the format that I would love to try to take this to, which I'm like not ready to do it yet because I just finished this. But I think this could be a great stage musical, actually.
I agree.
But it would take I don't even know how to do that. Like I have a friend who's in that field, and I'm going to take him to lunch or dinner and say, hey, so listen to this. How does somebody even begin to take something like this? And I'm assuming it would be like off Broadway first. And even that would be cool, just to do something creatively that I've never done before. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes and what the reception is, and what my appetite for digging into something brand new like that now is. But I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, you mentioned the way people listen to music, and I don't listen to much modern music, but I listen to a lot of classic stuff. But typically, I don't just put on an album and whatever. I'm on Sirius XM 70s or what have you.
Sure.
But I listen to this all the way through the first time, and then I listen to it all the way to the second time. And this is one of those albums that the more I listen to it, the more I want to listen to it. If you know what I mean. And I think a lot of people are going to find that, because you find little things. And again, if you've read the comic, you relate to it. It calls to mind Ryan's incredible art at those moments that are being described and that sort of thing. So, again, everybody, I'm going to remind you, as I always do when we do the crowdfunding episodes, that we would love for you to join the campaign, get this amazing album, but we understand that times are tight and maybe it's just not in your budget as much as you would like to right now. The other way you can help out Charles and the rest of the Curse Words team is to share this on social media. It's like I was saying before, terrible thing to find out after and then you can't get a hold of it. And people are going to want this music because it's amazing. So just share it on social media, let people know, let your comic shop know, so they can get in when the Kickstarter is available. And then as far as the reward tiers, do you want to go over what's available really quickly, Charles?
Sure. So the main thing I wanted to do with this Kickstarter was to release it as a vinyl album, because I grew up with records when I was a kid. Something that's given a lot of joy to my life in the last, 5-10 years has been like buying a record player, going to the record shop, like buying records again. Like I really have gotten a kick out of that. And so I felt like it would be cool to have a record. But pressing records in any quantity, even a small quantity, is not cheap. And so, and frankly, making the record wasn't super cheap either. So my hope with the Kickstarter was to fund enough to pay for a run of records to be pressed. And fortunately, we're at that point. Like we hit the goal very quickly yesterday. So the records will exist, which is great. But beyond the records, there's also just a digital version of it. You can get MP3s if you prefer. That's significantly more reasonably priced. But then beyond that, there's also, I'm going to do a new Curse Words prose story, which I've never tried to do before. I've never written curse words in anything but comics form. So I'm going to write it I'll have to sort of decide what length feels right, but probably something in like the long short story. So like 10,000 words around there. That will have spot illustrations by Ryan. That's going to be a really cool tier that you can get as an add-on. There are actually 3 different kinds of vinyl record. You can get it in standard black or a clear red or this sparkly blue vinyl, which is really neat. What else did I have on there? You can get like a live performance from me where I fly out to wherever you are. This is for like the really, really high-end people who really want to really feel like supporting or have like a convention or something like that they want me to appear at. You can get that. You can have me perform one of the songs on an acoustic, like do it like specifically for you. Like you will have your own live special version of it that I will send you. I can compose a little theme for you. Like you'll have your own theme music, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know. There's lots of stuff. As always with these, you can get some new Ryan Brown agreed to draw 50 illustrations of Curse Words characters playing musical instruments. So that's really beautiful. He's amazing. So the point is there's a lot of cool things you can get besides just the record. As you mentioned, you can get the collected edition of the whole comic series too. So if you've never checked out Curse Words, that's a great thing to do. So we really just wanted to make it like a robust package where you could enjoy the album, but you could also get a lot of cool things connected to it or adjacent to it, just like with any Kickstarter. So I think it's a great set of tiers and packages and all kinds of different things. And so far, it's great. Like as we're talking, we just hit like 250% funded, which is amazing for day 2. So we'll see where it goes. There's a stretch goal at, I don't know if we'll hit it. I'd be pretty surprised if we hit it at this point. Who knows? But at $88,888 for me to write and compose an 8 Billion Genies concept album, which is the follow-up series that Ryan and I did to Curse Words. So I don't think we'll hit it, but if we do hit it, I will absolutely do that, which would be a pretty bonkers thing to embark upon.
Yeah,
but I'd have the budget.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, at this point, it would be different than the Curse Words one because I would have the budget to do it ahead of time. So if we hit it, I would love to have the excuse to write another record, and I think people would be pretty psyched about an 8 Billion Genies record. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, 8 Billion Genies is fantastic. I'd have a hard time choosing between the two if I could only read one ever again in my life between Curse Words and 8 Billion Genies. I do have to ask, though, because, okay, some of these people are listening and they're saying, oh, I'll get the digital tier because I don't have a record player, I don't have room or what have you. But, there's going to be a new Pros, which is in one of the tiers for the physical. But they'll be able to get the Pros as an add-on if they're getting the digital. Is that right?
That's right. I built the whole thing out so that people would be able to get the items pretty much a la carte. So Kickstarter has put in a lot of cool tools that let you kind of mix and match how you want. So what you do is you choose the thing you want, you choose the digital edition, but then that'll pull up a menu right after saying, do you want to add anything on? And a lot of those special rewards are in there. So if you wanted, say, the digital edition and the blue vinyl and your own custom theme music, you could get exactly that package just by sort of clicking through the menus. So it's all workable.
Fantastic. Well, remember, everybody, link in the show notes. Go and check it out. It's fantastic. Like I said, there's in Charles' newsletter, you can hear that first song, Magic Man. But if you go to the Kickstarter page, there's some clips of 3 different songs, and you can hear just how amazing it is. So it's been, like you said, Charles, a real long time since I've had you on the show. So we are going to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the other things you're doing, sort of
of course.
State of the soul here. And I want to start with Star Wars. It's, I read almost everything you do, with the exception of Star Wars, and it's because I feel like I'm so far behind in Star Wars. I wanted to get caught up with everything before I started reading your stuff, and now it's like, oh man, I'm so far behind. I don't know where to start. But for those not aware, sort of the current era of Star Wars books, at least the modern ones, not the High Republic stuff, but the other stuff is coming to an end because they're about at the point in the timeline where the movie Return of the Jedi starts. So there's going to be more Star Wars coming up, I think, starting next year. You're still going to be playing in that world, whether High Republic or kind of the regular timeline?
I mean, I have a novel that's been announced that is the final novel in the High Republic story cycle that we've been telling since my novel Light of the Jedi started it all off back in 2021. So that's called Trials of the Jedi. That comes out in 2025. So I'm working on that now, and it's that's an awesome project. It's definitely challenging. I think about Episode 9 and all of the things that had to be handled to make that movie land, because it wasn't just ending one movie, it was ending 9 movies and so on and so forth. And I kind of feel like that way to some degree with Trials of the Jedi, because there have been so many awesome stories told in this High Republic world that to try to do them all justice and be satisfying with all the characters and all that is a real, it's not easy. It is not easy at all. But I also love a challenge, and I think I'm doing pretty well with it. I'm almost done with the first draft, which is exciting. Beyond that, look, I am very connected to the Star Wars world. I do a lot of things in it, and I think it is fair to assume that I will continue in one way or another. I'm a consultant for Lucasfilm at the moment, so I'm in that world quite a bit. I love Star Wars. It's hard to imagine that chunk of my career not continuing, but I'm not going to say more than that.
Yeah, fair enough. And everybody, he probably can't, and we don't want to get him in
right,
trouble.
That's true too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good to know. That's an excellent way to put it. Because the other part of this is, that's sort of the work you're doing. I guess we'll say it's licensed work, right? You're working on licensed characters. Yep. And the other stuff you're doing, whether it be in the Shrouded College or, things you're doing with Ryan where it's kind of creator-owned, we haven't seen much traditional superhero stuff for you, and it's probably a band. It's not that you don't have stories, right? It's just kind of a bandwidth thing. You sort of have to pick and choose at this point.
Yeah, I think that I found a rhythm with Star Wars that really suited me. And so all of my licensed comic work has been with Star Wars for the last many, a good chunk of years. And so, which I don't really have an issue with. I mean, I did a lot of work in traditional superheroes for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. I wrote, I didn't write everything, but I wrote a lot of them. And so I feel like I scratched the itch to the degree that I needed to. And Star Wars seems to be continually feeling fresh to me. So I'm not saying I'll never go back to superheroes. There's a substantial superhero project I've been working on for, I don't know, 4 years at this point. So that, I think, fingers crossed, will come out in 2025. But it's not, I mean, as long as I'm always constantly writing, like I'm going to go write as soon as we're done talking tonight. Like it's not like I don't have tons of stuff to do. I think I would like to think, fingers crossed, that if I need superheroes, they'll be there for me. Isn't that kind of that's what they do, right? If you need a superhero, they're there. But right now, I'm happy with the workload I've got. That's fair.
Well, since I saw you last, I saw Charles at the end of May. He was here at my local show, Phoenix Comic Con. It was great to see you. I hadn't seen you in a while. Since then, I reread the entire Curse Words. I reread Hell to Pay. I reread The Bloody Dozen. I reread Anyone, and I reread Oracle Year. And I was trying to think. And part of the reason I was doing this is like, what's my favorite thing Charles has done? And honestly, it's like trying to pick your favorite child. It's just I don't know that it's possible. But one of the things I didn't reread because it's still so fresh in my mind. It never goes far away when I think about your work. Is the 8 Billion Genies that we've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And this is just an incredible story that you and Ryan put together about what if everybody on Earth got a wish and it goes about as terribly as you would expect. But the thing specifically I want to ask you, kind of sort of on the record here, and I've mentioned this to you before, what was so impressive was the breadth of time, because it starts out and it's sort of happening in the moment from issue to issue, a little bit of cliffhangers. But then as the series goes on, there's big jumps. You got 8 months, 8 years, 80 years. So we really get an idea of the long-term effects of us, humans all getting a wish. Can you talk a little bit about why you structured the story that way and how that sort of came about?
I think part of it is that I work well within, I like to have a format, like I like to have something like an engine. This was not the easiest engine to work with because, as you said, like the way it's an 8-issue series and each issue covers an increasing increment of time. So the first issue covers the first 8 minutes from the moment the genies appear to everybody on Earth. The second one is the first 8 days, then weeks, then months, and then it goes all the way to the first 8 centuries in one issue. So that is a formalism that was appealing to me in terms of giving me a structure, but also it's very hard to make a satisfying story out of 80 years in a single issue, particularly when in the last issue you had to make a satisfying story out of 8 years. Because the characters have to maintain, you have to be really clever about it, I guess, not to toot my own horn, but it required a level of inventiveness that I was really happy with. So I just liked the challenge of that. It's not that different from deciding to write a 10-song concept album, honestly. There's a challenge to it that's interesting to me. But beyond that, I also felt like giving the reader a sense of structure and predictability, even if they couldn't really predict what it was going to be. It was a way to say, in this world where anything can happen that could be completely chaotic and bizarre, you will know that this much structure is imposed upon it, that the next issue is going to cover 8 weeks of time in this world, or 8 days, or 8 months, or whatever. So it was a way of signaling to the readers that we had a plan, that we were on top of things from the start, that it wasn't just going to spin out into endless chaos. Like there was a goal that we were shooting toward. And I feel like we both, like Ryan's skill and my skill meshed perfectly in this series in a way that I think is going to be, we have the next thing we're working on. We really like it. It's really cool. But honestly, something about this book just really, it worked for us as creators, and it seems to have worked really well for readers in a way that we understand is going to be a little difficult to replicate, but we don't need to. We're not trying to copy what we did on Genies. We just want to keep telling stories that are inventive and interesting that we believe in. So.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people that were fans of your collaboration on Curse Words, they showed up for 8 Billion Genies because of that, right? but it is a completely, like, the emotion of it is completely different. You know, a little more gravitas, a little more sort of connectivity, relatability, I think, to 8 Billion Genies than there is in. Not that there isn't.
I agree.
You know, moments. You
no, I agree with you completely. Like, it's an extraordinarily universal premise that, by definition, affects everybody on the world. Everybody can put themselves in the shoes of the characters in that book, and so it's interesting. What we're trying to do with the new one is almost a mix of the two. Like, it is the characters are specific; they go on specific journeys, but it's also about things that I think are going to be really relatable to people. At least I hope so. Like, we had a whole nother idea for the follow-up series that we scrapped after about 6 months of development because it didn't feel quite as us. Like, it felt smaller than what we tend to do. And so it's really interesting to think that Ryan and I have locked into a feel and a tone for what we do that's so specific that there's almost everything isn't that, and there's only a few things that are that. So it makes it hard, but it also means that when we get it right, we're delivering something that I don't think other people in comics do. Not because it's so much better, just because it's unique. It's like our frequency is different than other frequencies that other creators, even amazing ones. We work on our own; they work on their own.
Yeah, 100%. Well, everybody, I was talking a little bit about not getting traditional superhero stuff from Charles right now, but I think the closest thing you're doing is the Shrouded College, which is fantastic, with gorgeous art, gorgeous colors from your collaborators. So started off with Hell to Pay, kind of introduced us to the Shrouded College and sort of the concept of these coins, kind of the currency of hell, if you will, and then onto the Bloody Dozen, which was vampires in space, everybody. Like, and if that doesn't make you want to read it, you're just crazy. But we do have the third volume of that coming soon as well, right?
Yeah. So the Shrouded College is an attempt to tell a bunch of stories in a very interconnected universe. It's kind of like those first chunk of movies in the MCU that all built up to the Avengers. So we're telling 6 stories that are each different, have different characters in them. They're all about agents of this institution called the Shrouded College, which I'll talk more about in a second. But in each one of these stories, you meet more of them. You meet different agents who have different missions, and that all builds up to a 7th story where they'll all kind of come together and smash up together, and it'll be like a cool, like, Avengers kind of deal. And so what is the story of the Shrouded College? It's set in modern day with lots of flashbacks and history and stuff like that. I love that kind of thing. But it's set in modern day, and it's about a supernatural organization who is in the middle of a supernatural Cold War with several other supernatural organizations around the world that are based in different spots. The Shrouded College is basically based in England and Western Europe. But you have one in Eastern Europe and Russia. You have one in the Far East. You have one in America. And they all kind of have their own goals. And they're like nation states, magical nation states, essentially. And they all hate each other and are trying to destroy each other and steal each other's power. But the Shrouded College is the smallest and least powerful of all of them. And it is constantly on its back foot and has to do all this. It basically survives by being the scuzziest of all of them. It does a lot of dirty tricks kind of stuff. It recruits agents to perform these essentially supernatural Mission Impossibles, which is each of the 6 books is about a different one of these supernatural missions that these people have been recruited for. But they tie up their people in these terrible deals, like deals with the devil, these magical deals with the devil. So all of the agents get magical powers, but they have to complete this impossible mission before they can be released from the contract. And somehow it seems to always work out that even if they think they've completed the mission, they haven't, and they're stuck in this endless war. So we've gotten 2 of them done so far. The entire series was optioned by Universal and Seth MacFarlane's Fuzzy Door Pictures production company. So what's nice about that is that it means we can do the whole thing. And it's mostly been working with my good friend Will Sliney, who's an incredible Irish creator. He's an artist par excellence, and he did Rise of Kylo Ren with me, which is a Star Wars book. But also he's been the main creative force behind the Shrouded College along with me. So he's drawing the third series now, the third mini, which is called The Cold Witch, which is basically John Wick with zombies. Each of these stories has its very quick and easy, like 1, 2, 3 elevator pitch thing. Hell to Pay is Hellboy meets Indiana Jones. Bloody Dozen is Blade meets Apollo 13, and then this new one is John Wick meets zombies. So it's set in Soviet Russia. So it's very it's very intense. It's very cool. That's actually what I was working on before this call. I'm going to just finish the second issue of it when we hang up. And it's been really fun to just write and build out a supernatural horror universe, like a horror action supernatural universe where every story feels kind of like a really cool. Remember movies like Underworld or Prophecy or, things like that from the kind of late 90s, early 2000s? They weren't great, but they all had like a very hooky premise, and they were all kind of fun. Werewolves and vampires have been locked in war for centuries. That's what we're going to see. I don't know, whatever they might have been. But I kind of had a soft spot for those. And like they always didn't have the biggest budget, but they had heart in a way. And so that's what all these stories kind of do too. They're designed to be a little, I don't know. They're all like really well executed. It's not like they're bad comics by any means, but they have a specific tone, just like the Chris Woods concept album did, which is reminiscent of those like really badass, like movies like that. They're kind of like B+ level movies where you would have you could see the movie kind of creaking at the seams. Event Horizon is another good example. Like they didn't totally have the money to do what they wanted to do, but they spent a lot of that money on like 3 different small sequences, and then you'd be like, oh, that's where everything went, and then the rest of the movie didn't have any money. But in comics, that's not a problem because it's art, right? So the budget is sort of unlimited in terms of special effects and so on. So we can execute our versions of those without having to worry about, oh no, we spent our $4 million. Now we have to, I don't know, we can't have ghosts or whatever the thing is that we might want to do. We can have ghosts. We can have anything we want. So it's in the spirit of those kind of ideas, those really cool, high-concept horror adventure ideas executed with an unlimited budget. That's what each Shrouded College story is.
Yeah, it's an excellent way to put it because when I think about, especially Underworld, just the visuals, just the tone and kind of the feel that the visuals of that movie, it's always raining, it's always dark, like what it evokes in the viewer. And it's kind of the same thing with Will's art, like you pick up that book and flip through it. And it's just like, oh man, I want to read this because it just looks badass.
Yeah, 100%. He's incredibly skilled, and he drew Hell to Pay, and then the artist on The Bloody Dozen was Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque, who drew Letter 44. Right. Yep. So, which was a series that I did about a decade ago about an alien invasion of the Earth, and getting to work with Alberto again has been a real joy. He's amazing. I think we did a really good looking book with Bloody Dozen, and it's a slow burn, right? Like we're aware that we're putting out material in a way that isn't necessarily the typical way to do this would have been Shrouded College 1, Shrouded College 5, 10, 15, 20, and each story arc is a different set of characters. And so doing it this way means readers have to pick them up as they come out, have to find them. But at the same time, the trades will always exist, and they're designed to be read in any order up until that last one. So you can, if you find this in 2026 when we're getting close to the end, you will be fine. If you find it now, you will be fine, and you will have a great ride ahead of you.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned it being optioned. A lot of your stuff has been optioned. Again, I know NDAs and all that stuff. But things still moving forward, still going to see something maybe on the big screen or the small screen with
I mean, there's a number of things that are moving forward in very significant ways right now. I can't really speak about it, obviously, but the stuff that's been announced publicly. 8 Billion Genies is being developed by Amazon Studios. The same Universal also has Letter 44, same people who have Shrouded College, and then there's various other things in the works too, which is exciting. I mean, if and when that happens, it would be, I love my career as it is, but at the same time, it would be a real game changer, and it would put my work and the work of Ryan or Will or whoever, Alberto, my co-creators, in front of so many eyeballs. And I don't have to have the biggest audience in the world. That's not my primary driver. I don't need to have every person on earth know my name. But it is neat to think that it will connect with more people. So I would love it if one of those things happens. I just cross my fingers every day and hope that it continues to move forward. But right now, it's things are looking good on a number of them.
Yeah. I know anyone I think option for a TV show, that's one I think would make a fantastic series. So
me too.
Fingers crossed that it'll happen someday. Well, Charles, I know you got to get back to work. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but it's been a real pleasure. Congrats on the success of the concept album Kickstarter. The fact that you're at 250% on day 2. Sky's the limit, man. I'd love it. Just selfishly, I'd love the 8 Billion Genies concept album. So, root for that 88.
We'll see if people, it's a short campaign. It only runs until the end of the month. I didn't do a full 30 days on this one. I just wanted to get in and out of it. So we'll see if people show up. I hope they do. I think nobody's going to regret getting this album. And, you can find it on Kickstarter. As you said, there's links, I think, in the show bio here, show notes here. Just search on Crosswords concept album. You could just Google that, and it'll come up immediately. So,
yeah, and again, a link to Charles' newsletter as well in the show notes, everybody. That's the best way to keep up with his work, what's going on, what's coming out, convention appearances, and what have you. As far as I know, you're not going to be at San Diego this year, right?
No, I'm not doing San Diego. I have too much work, and I've traveled so much in the first half of this year. I was gone constantly. I just wanted to be home and mow the lawn,
Fair.
do the things that you do when you're at your house. But my next convention is in the middle of August. I'm doing Terrificon in Connecticut. It's a great show. And then Dragon Con over Labor Day, which I've never done before, but people say is one of the best and most unique conventions in the country. So I'm very excited to check that out. And Atlanta's a cool town anyway, so it'll be great.
Cool. Well, again, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time.
Of course. Thanks.
And to our audience, we want to thank you for joining us. As always, we really appreciate the support, and we'll talk to you next time.